everyone, listen, I was in the middle of editing the most recent stream and I came across a little bit of an issue. I know towards the end of the stream we had some issues with YouTube that were causing either weird frame drops or stuttering with the stream, but apparently there was one of them earlier on during a segment in which I was discussing my history and the things I've been through. It doesn't look like the rest of the segment's been damaged, but at the very beginning there's a little hiccup. I wanted to give this little video at the front of that so you guys knew that was there and that it was coming. Anyway, this is a pretty intimate series of details about myself and my life. My request is going to be that people be respectful in the comments and treat some of this subject matter for what it is. And yeah, I really appreciated this conversation with chat, so please enjoy. Hey everybody. So I realize I'm here most of the time because you guys have no idea who I am or what I do or any of that. So I figured this would be a good opportunity to kind of talk about my history and just some of my stuff. Now, I probably won't go into super big specifics because I do want to keep some level of anonymity. But I do want to give the chat things to look at. So, and to discuss and ask questions. So this is putting this out to chat. You guys have the ability right now in here to ask whatever questions you want, and I will answer them to my level of comfort or clarity. So, yeah, I'll wait till we got a number of questions in chat, but I'll kind of just start off. So, I'm a trans woman. I identify as a non-binary trans woman. I use she, her, they, fair pronouns. I won't give my full name, but I do go by Jess or Jessica or Jessie. I recently changed that legally, so my dead name is officially dead. I also practice under my current name. I am a counselor. I am trained in counseling, specifically. I have a master's degree from a fairly decent university. I have an undergrad in psychology. That's a BA, so a Bachelor's of Arts. And I have 2 Associates of Arts, one in philosophy and one in psychology. So I have to be a little dodgy here, but I'll explain people's questions. A lot of people are asking, how'd you get into therapy? It's not my fault. Here's what I'll say. I, for the long time during my 20s, had a lot of shit happen. In my early 20s, I had started dating a woman who was a little bit older than me by about 6 years. I was 19 when I met her. And I had grown up without a dad. So when I met this person, really, really loved them, really fell in love with them very hard. And then I found out that they were 3 months pregnant. They had gotten pregnant by their ex, which at the time was not thought to be biologically possible due to some issues that he had. And so I had to make a decision right then and there. This was also around the time where I was considering transitioning. I decided to go with cis heteronormativity. And chose to be the parent to a child that was not biologically mine. I lived in that life till about around 2004-ish, 2005-ish, give or take. And early in the year that this happened, my wife at the time passed away. She was in a accident, a horse riding accident. Essentially what happened is she had gone riding. She was an experienced rider, dressage and all that kind of stuff. And she got thrown off her horse, Zephyr, who was incredibly spookable, very nervous, very anxious horse. And there was a guy who didn't chain up his dog on his property. The dog ran out, bark, 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 scared the horse, threw her off. She never woke up. She was in the hospital for about 5 or 6 days until they declared her legally brain dead. And I was suddenly alone. This led me to be in a lot of really shitty relationships, and it also led me to be a really shitty parent. Because I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know how to fill out a checkbook at that point. To make ends meet, I worked in restaurant management. I was a manager for a fast food company and was pretty successful at it. I tried going back to school once for small business administration because I wanted to open up a gaming store or a comic book store, but I just never finished it. Before my wife passed away, I had a friend of mine who will remain nameless, but this person's also in the mental health field to some degree, and they're brilliant. They're probably one of the smartest people I know. There's probably two people I can think off the top of my head, three people now that I think of it, that are probably the smartest human beings I've ever met. This person's one of them. And this person befriended me for some weird ass reason. Had no need to, but decided to be my friend. And we started up a thing called an Explorer group. We started regularly using entheogens as a way to expand and explore consciousness. We tried all sorts of stuff. And what ended up happening is yeah, I started to wake up a little bit. I started to figure myself out. I then started going deeper. And even with other people who didn't want to engage in this stuff or who weren't interested, when the fun part of it faded off, I was still doing it. I was also regularly meditating and regularly reading philosophers and trying to better myself. All this kind of came to a head as of probably around 2007 or 8 when I ended my relationship with my long-term girlfriend at the time, who was toxic as fuck and abusive to me and my child. And I started going back to therapy. I also decided at that point I couldn't be in a profession that actively did harm. Not even just the factory farming aspects of meat and all that stuff, though that is absolutely a good reason to not do that. But there was also the reasoning that I was selling people food that was harming them, essentially. Right? I don't mind treats here and there, but the reality is we had regular customers who I could see were unhealthy, and while I don't ever want to tell people what they can and cannot eat, I didn't want to be part of that process anymore. So I started going back to school. And initially, the plan was for me to go to school for nursing because I wanted to do something I thought could be helpful. I was already somewhat able-bodied person. The problem is that I got scared by the nurses. The community college I attended required you to get a general associates and then would go into the nursing program. But the problem was there was usually 50 people that wanted in the nursing program and only 10 slots. And these women would cut a bitch. Like, just full stop. At this point, the gender stuff was pretty well buried. I had been deeply practicing sort of Zen meditation at this point, reading a lot of Buddhism, reading a lot of like philosophy. My gender stuff was basically just buried under a lot of it. So what happened is nursing wasn't going to work out. So I decided to go to school for psych and philosophy because I gave a fuck about philosophy. And from there, I just kept going. And after doing a little bit of math and figuring everything out, I decided that the profession I wanted to do was counseling. And the reason for that is pretty simple. Social workers are usually split into two different groups. Usually they're a micro or a macro program, one that deals with community, one deals with therapy. Though the therapy ones, based on the college, may or may not get the best training. They tend to compensate this with, having requirements for continuing education. I still have those in order to retain part of my accreditation, but the fact is it just didn't resonate with me. So scratch that. Didn't want to go for a doctorate because I'd be in school for another 7 years. And to be honest, I make about what I'd make if I was there too. So it's fine. Plus, in a lot of psychological classes or specifically psychological programs for doctorates, usually you're doing what's called the clinical practitioner model. That stuff is based around essentially being able to do therapy and research. I had no interest in being part of research. I like reading research, but I didn't want to do it. Holy shit. Thank you so much, Nerenu. Thank you so much. That GIF is supposed to have a sound, but I need to fix it because it was too long. Thank you so freaking much. That's amazing. So I decided on counseling. Never looked back. I went from a community college to a fairly notable, I think it's called Big Ten, I don't know sports, school. And then from there, I went to a fairly decent sized school in a fairly decent sized town. Um, I got my master's as of late 2017. I started practicing around early 2018. I was working at a different place then. And eventually, I just went to go work with my friend because the other place turned out to be dangerous and shitty. Um, Not only had I come out as a trans woman and the reception was lukewarm and weird, but on top of it, there was just a reality that they were trying to push me open as quickly as possible in the middle of a pandemic. So, yeah, that's how I got to therapy. That's also, due to all the things I just mentioned, one of the reasons why I'm an ordained Zen priest. I am an ordained priest in the Hollow Bones Rinzai Zen order. And so someday I might talk about that stuff, but that stuff I'm going to leave off the table for right now. My experiences in Zen were generally positive. I really love my teacher, Jimpo Dennis Kelly. There are things within that lineage that are questionable or things that need to be examined. Now is not that time right now. So I'm still trying to figure out how that stuff settles out with me being trans. So right now it's on a hiatus. So I'll answer Brittany's question next. Also, what was your coming out experience like? So I had realized that I wanted to be a girl probably around 16. I remember very clearly wearing Halloween outfits that were like skirts and cute outfits. Because the thing was is that at the time I was fairly androgynous. I was a tall, lanky goth kid. When I met my wife, I just kind of buried all that shit. So when I finally started realizing this was actually due to a fuck up on my part. So back around 2016 or 17, I want to say it's late 2017. I had posted an article. This was big when the trans bathroom shit was going on. And I was completely unaware of trans issues. I just didn't have much knowledge about that shit. And what happened is I had posted an article that I, unbeknownst to me, had accidentally platformed a TERF. Basically, a woman had been talking about how seeing male genitalia in the bathroom would scare her, would trigger her, and being someone who had worked with many clients who have dealt with sexual assault, I was very compassionate towards her. What I didn't realize is I was being rolled. I was being manipulated. This woman was using the fear and the fear of sexual assault and the desire to protect women as a way to incept an argument. And so when I posted this and said my thoughts on it, of course, not anywhere ever disparaging trans people from my perspective at the time, but still, unbeknownst to me, kind of engaging in some microaggressive stuff. What happened is my connections I had over Facebook started losing their shit on me. I had a number of people, queer people from all ages, start to call me out. I lost a number of friends. And no matter how I argued or brought up my concerns, I was basically shut down. I ended up hiding that post. What happened is that I sat down and went, I don't understand what I did wrong. I don't get it. And this is what actually led me to start doing research, trying to understand the trans experience more effectively. It's actually what led me to ContraPoints. I had already seen some of Contra's early work as far as, being a cross-dressing alcoholic. But as Contra started to come out, I also started questioning things about myself. Around 2019, around October-ish, I was laying in bed with Zena. It was very late at night. And I said, can I tell you something? And they said, yeah, of course. And I said, I think I might be trans. And we talked about it, and they were incredibly supportive. We then told my child, who was incredibly supportive. We started telling our friends. They were incredibly supportive. And that's generally my experience. My coming out experience has been incredibly positive. I have not really received a whole lot of abuse other than people saying dumb shit on this channel. I've not really received a whole lot of pushback. Yeah, I've had the type of transition experience that I think everybody should have. My friends have been supportive. I haven't lost anybody. And yeah, so that's kind of what my experience has been. I've had a really positive one. My body has taken the hormones really well, so I more and more every day look more the way I want to. Um, I'm lucky enough and privileged enough that I make enough money that I've been able to scrape together the money to do laser, so I'm not covered in awful hair. Um, I understand the fear response to characteristics seen as masculine as a survivor of abuse and sexual assault, but yeah, no, and that's the problem. I didn't understand that, Brittany. So yeah, that's kind of where things went. So yeah, that's kind of been my coming out experience. Who are your personal heroes, personally and professionally? So again, I have to be very clear on names. I can't say. The person I mentioned, who is a dear friend, who kind of walked with me through a lot of psychedelic experiences and meditation experiences and a lot of really weird spiritual journeys and traveling around the country to meet with gurus and just a bunch of other crazy shit we did. I just wanted to soak up as much wisdom as I could. Um, you know, it's it was really meaningful. Around 2011, we had a falling out because my behavior had become way too uncomfortable. I was falling apart at the seams. I had lost my partner, who I'd been planning to marry. Yeah, I was in a rough place, and this person rightfully cut me out because they were afraid that I was going to be more toxic towards them. So I ended up losing that friendship. We're still in contact, very vaguely over social media and things like that. But no, I love them a great deal. Um, yeah. So that would be one personal hero. Um, my Zen master, Jupo Dennis Kelly, is also a pretty big hero of mine. He's a very opinionated 6'3" Irish Catholic looking dude who's bald as shit and really aggressive about Zen. And yeah, he kind of gave me a worldview that I could work with to do things. And there's definitely some problems in that or things that need work, but there's a level of acceptance that I needed there and a level of like kick myself in the ass to kind of function. Um, I'm a person who had been through a great deal of shit and meant much of it multi generational stuff that was sort of passed on to me. And Junpo was really good at seeing through that stuff and his personal story, including, running a LSD drug family in the West Coast back in the 70s, or going to jail for 17 months, or um, telling his Zen master to fuck off because he was abusing women. Yeah, no, Junpo's a character. I love that man dearly. You should meet more Zen masters. Some of them are dicks. um, yeah, I think that covers sort of my heroes. ContraPoints is definitely an influence. I definitely really appreciate her. I've said before on this channel that I'm a pretty damn big fan of hers, and I think that she has been um, really instrumental in kind of helping me come to terms with who I am. Yeah, no, I don't have enough good things to say about her. I do think it's interesting that like it's weird to me because like yeah, I don't know. My coming out has a lot of similarities to Contra's, just difference in timing. She did it first. So yeah, she means a lot to me. Let's see. Agohiza said, "This isn't a question, but I just hurt my own brain by thinking about a situation where an AMAB person is raised non-binary, but then decides that they're a boy later in life and then technically trans." Kind of. So the problem is that it's an interesting thought experiment, but the idea would be is how do you raise someone as that? Now, if you raise them without gender, that's not the same as non-binary. So we have to get clear on terms. The other thing I would say about that, Okiza, is there would have to be some sort of discussion around like what gender messages did they pick up. Because if they lean more masculine or what, you could make arguments as to, you know, where they would be. It's an interesting thought experiment. By the way, if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to hear me whine more about myself. Let's see. Other questions. Breakthrough moment as a leftist. Thanagar asked this. So I got raised as a very, very liberal Democrat. I was raised by a family that was incredibly poor, and my mother was very clear to me growing up that like no, like Democrats are the good guys, Republicans are the bad guys. But it was pretty kid like language, and I know that's not to be entirely true now. But the reality of the situation is that I remember very clearly, like I mentioned in a previous segment, growing up playing with maggots. I remember being at a DHS food stamp line and sitting on a floor in their little kid area and finding a little thing playing with it and being told later that I was playing with a maggot. I remember government cheese. I remember my aunt dumpster things that college students threw out, like beanbags and shit. I remember being in line hoping for handouts to be able to have a Christmas because my mom couldn't afford it. So I became very distrustful of capitalism. I became very distrustful of anybody who was actively propping this, to the point where I held a lot of really extreme values for a long time. I remember interacting with Occupy Lansing, and some of the other occupies in the Michigan and Midwestern area. I've also, you know, talked to a lot of different groups from, you know, at the Midwest and some people in the West Coast about types of stuff like this. And I remember thinking that anybody above 70,000 was a fucking monster because the data showed very clearly that like that's what you need to be maximally happy before there were diminishing returns. No, I remember having really dumb thoughts like that. And it's always kind of just been a thing there. I've just never really been great at articulating it always. I would get too frustrated or too upset. BPD and ADHD make it really hard sometimes because rejection sensitivity dysphoria can make it really hard to trust one's own perspective. So yeah, that sucked. But yeah, I've always been at that left leaning. It wasn't until I started watching certain YouTubers. So like Contra, Vosh, H Bomber Guy. Those are probably the three really notable ones. Mia Mulder recently. I think it was just a combination of factors. I was spending a lot more time with queer people as I aged, and then also on top of that was just becoming more leftist during the Trump administration. So I don't know where the exact shift in my life would have been from liberal to leftist, but it's always been there to some degree. I just got better at articulating it. But even I said dumb shit like if Bernie can't win, we shouldn't, you know, vote for anybody, you know, back in 2016. I mean, I've had some dumb fucking takes in the past that I regret. And I learned from them. And even then, I still voted for Hillary back then, as much as I fucking loathe her. Right. So what else? What else do you guys want to know? We all have them. I think there should be a grace period of people just saying dumb shit. Same, Brittany. Oh yeah, sorry, I missed that one to you, Matt. You mentioned gaming before. Do you have a favorite type or kind of game? So Gaming's an interesting one because I don't really have a particular big favorite. I think the main one I like is survival crafting. Games like 7 Days to Die, Valheim, that kind of stuff I just find to be a blast. Like going through and collecting stuff and all that. There's something very nice and like absorbing about that. My favorite game in the last probably 5 years, there's two big ones. They're about equal for me. Horizon Zero Dawn, which has probably one of the best stories I've ever fucking seen, and the game Control, which is, by all rights, the best version of the SCP Foundation without being the SCP Foundation. That's just my take. Control and Horizon Zero Dawn are great. Neither of them are crafting. I am playing a lot of Valheim these days, but that's been pretty good. So books are weird for me because the problem is that as far as like, so the problem is like I like knowing things, but I hate reading. There's actually been some studies showing that ADHD has connections to narcolepsy, which fits my experience because when I try reading, if I'm not walking and reading out loud or listening to an audiobook, I'll just fall asleep. It's really hard. But that being said, there are some books that I've really enjoyed. Junpo Roshi's book, A Heart Blown Open, I thought was pretty great. Containment Breach is okay, but I'd rather just watch people play Containment Breach than Thanagor. It's okay. I also love Subnautica. That's another great game. Fuck yeah, Subnautica. Just the ocean is terrifying. I do like horror too. Resident Evil games are fucking great. Resident Evil 7 was gorgeous. I'm actually looking forward to playing Resident Evil 8. If anyone wants to see me play Resident Evil 8, I would not mind doing that on stream. But yeah, books like Heart Blown Open by Junpo Roshi, Spiritual Materialism by Trungpa Rinpoche. Let's see. Anything by Cornel West. I really like Ken Wilber's Integral Spirituality. I think that's a really good one. Yeah. My stuff always tended towards more esoteric stuff like state experiences and shit. It's true, Tiamat. Wait, your name is of the sea. You should be fine with it. You're like a 5-headed dragon. Calm yourself. Seasonal Spirit, favorite color, and would you see yourself alternating your hair color? Yes, actually, this is alternating. This is red. I've previously done fuchsia, if you look back on the channel, and I normally do pink. I'm actually considering going to an orange or like a teal. So that'd be cool. Hey, Radical, nice to meet you. Hi, we're just doing a little bit of a segment talking about my background so people know who the fuck I am. Short version, lots of tragedy, some Zen, some school, and then master's degree. Go back and watch the rest of the video. But yeah, welcome to the stream. Welcome everybody, by the way. We're up to 16 viewers, which is very good. So, but yes, I definitely see my hair changing over time. I like keeping my hair colored. It helps with dysphoria. There's something really nice about it. Most controversial take. This is a hard one. So I've been actually holding off on this one because I didn't want to get blowback for it, but fuck it, I'm feeling good today. So I have to I'll say this out in a way that's got to be very, very clear. In previous discussions, I've mentioned the idea about harm. And that is that whenever we're talking about harm, we have to discuss the idea about what our actions do. And as a clinician, it's very important for me to consider this. So I'll give you a couple scenarios. Yes, Thanagor, I mean the Step on Me Mommy game, Vampire Mommy. Someday I hope to achieve her level of prestige. So here's the thing. I'll give you scenarios and tell you about them. I think I mentioned this one on stream before, but if I didn't, I'll go over it again. The scenario was presented to us as this. Our teacher during a class said, let's say a client comes to you and says that they are HIV positive. And this person is sleeping indiscriminately without protection with partners. Here's the question. Is that sufficient enough immediate harm to breach confidentiality? What do you guys think? I just want to see a couple of people in chat before I go on. If a client tells a therapist that they are HIV positive and sleeping with people indiscriminately without protection, is that enough to break confidentiality under the idea of immediate harm? In the scenario, no, Brittany, they are not telling the people. Yes, they are doing it recently and going to do it again. The question of who you report that to breach confidentiality, like if someone tells me, for example, they're going to go murder their wife, I call the police. Just that simple. Yeah, if they say they're going to do immediate harm, you call the police. By the way, if you like the stream, please feel free to donate. Streamlabs.com/transgirltherapist, all one word, and /tip. Money goes to help me and my partner survive because they deal with chronic illness. So do you guys want the answer? So I want to remind everybody that the question that prompted this hypothetical was Brittany asking, what are some of your most spicy takes? And so the answer I'll give you is this. If any of you did that, let's say you were a therapist and you breached that person's confidentiality, you would be doing direct harm to your client with no evidence of immediate harm. Here's my reasoning. Minerva's going in the right direction. So think about this. I want you to consider a couple different things. First off, if you actually go to the CDC website, you'll actually notice that, if I remember correctly, the actual level of contracting HIV is around 8, and this is with anal sex, 8 out of 10,000. Not 80, not 800, 8. So out of an 8 to 10,000, you're saying you would report this person. Now let's further go with the information I didn't provide you. No one here asked if this person was on a viral regimen, because there are many people who live with HIV whose viral load is below 1%. Every single one of you would potentially condemn this person to some sort of legal problem, because the fact is, people emotionally reason that this is bad, but they don't actually look at the data. So when this hypothetical came into my class that I was part of, I was the only person arguing against many people in the class, especially people from various like subgroups who very much were damaged by HIV, because they would have reported and they probably would have lost their licenses, or at very least took a fucking ding on their license, and quite possibly condemned their client to jail. I need you to remember that in the United States, there are states where if you knowingly have sex with someone with HIV, it can be considered a felony. If you were to breach confidentiality, you would not be only violating that client's rights without further data, you would destroy the trust in them, which would leave you without the ability to convince them to change this behavior, and potentially sending them to jail for incredibly draconic and very, very homophobic laws. And everybody in this chat just said that they would initially, until they thought about it for a moment. When you discuss the notion of harm, you need to be fucking clear. As a counselor, my job is to protect and take care of my client. Now, I want to be clear. There's a difference between having a reason to breach confidentiality and considering something ethical. I think it is ethical to tell clients that they should be more open with their partners about who they have sex with. I also think it's important to ask clarifying questions like, are you on some sort of antiviral regimen that is lowering your load? Because my loyalty first and foremost is to them. I breach confidentiality when it is important for the safety of a human being. And because the rate is so low, I want you to consider the math on this, right? So let me bring up, I might be doing this math a little off, but it brings up my point. Okay, so, all right, so let's do this. So 8, 10,000. That's the percentage you're willing to fucking ruin a person's life over. If you can't read that, lean closer. It's 0.008. Now, let's times that by someone who's on some kind of antiviral, so less than 1%, we'll do 0.1. So 0.0008. So you're talking about that level of percentage of chance. If I'm doing my math right, I might be slightly off. Math is not my strong. But do you understand my fucking point here? We have to be careful about how we think about these things. Now, I'm going to make an analogous example, but I will tell you the rest of that story first. The simple fact is this. When the teacher brought up this hypothetical, a lot of people in the class said some downright fucking awful shit about people with HIV, because there's a lot of fucking judgments for people, especially religious people, and various subgroupings tend to be very religious. And then the person revealed something. They have a doctorate in psychology. This person's practiced for years. This person's married, has a husband, has adopted children. And they've been HIV positive since they were a teen. All of these people said a bunch of really fucking stigmatizing bullshit in front of a person who was living with HIV, whose viral load was 0.01. They could not find living fucking virus in her fucking blood. And this person actively is the type of person who would get fucked by this type of violation of confidentiality, because no one else wanted to look up the CDC records and instead wanted to work with their feelings. So I tell you this story to lead into my actual spicy take, because that's pretty solid. This is going to get me canceled. So I think there is an issue with the way that we handle the stigma, the stigma around pedophilia. And I want to separate this into two separate discussions. When I talk about this, I am talking about non-acting pedophiles. Acting pedophiles are a different issue. These people have convinced themselves that this is something that is wanted by their victims. These are people who have gone too far off the boat. They're done. We have to talk about different systems for them. I'm not making those arguments today. But one of the points that I think is really good to notice here, and Thanagor, yes, viruses are about the idea of numerous people spreading them. That's how they overall take things. If you want, look up the CDC records. Maybe something has changed, but that's my memory of it. And again, different types of sex create different types of risk. I believe penile vaginal intercourse has a different number, although it's higher likelihood for the woman slightly. Right? Basically, if something's going into something, there's a higher likelihood of infection. My point is this. I think there's a problem in mental health that when somebody comes in, therapists get very judgy. And the issue with that holding of stigma is that because they can't get their shit together for 5 minutes and withhold judgment, clients are afraid to bring up things they're dealing with. And in the case of somebody who's a non-acting pedophile, what you're essentially doing is harm. We know that there's a stigma in clinicians about dealing with folks who have these types of urges. We also know there are many people that have these urges that don't act. There's a number of factors that lead to why they do. Many of them have to do with stuff going on with them. There's a number of discussions to be had there. But the people that don't, when we act with stigma towards them, that is, we treat them like they're already criminals, that they've done something wrong already, what we do is we essentially push them away from working on themselves and essentially push them to eventually acting. The reason I say this is because, very simply, when you create a stigma around a person who has some sort of thing they can't control, you are creating a scenario where you are setting them up to fail. This is true in any given scenario. And we know there are some people who are born with these urges, either due to brain abnormalities, lower IQ, a number of other fucking weird-ass things. Regardless of what's the actual cause, there seems to be ways in which this is pushed by trauma. There's ways in which this seems to have some biological correlates. I'm not really arguing its sourcing. What I'm saying is no one chooses this. Funny story. So when I was still a boy, I had inadvertently read an article from Quartz about a really lovely sex worker by the name of Alice Little. Alice was fucking great. She was super cool. She was like 4'9", cute as a butt. Very much an adult. Like she was like 28 or some shit at the time. I ended up finding her on Facebook. Not like I was hunting her down or anything, but one of my friends happened to be a friend of hers. A guy I worked with doing presentations had been like, oh yeah, I know her. I'll just introduce you. And so I ended up interacting with her. Somewhat, Brittany. That's the biological correlates. There's social ones as well. Anyway. Yeah, it does fall into the guilty before proven innocent seasonal spirit. You're on the right fucking track. And so one of the things I had a really fascinating conversation with her about once is therapists in the area. This was a girl who made like $1,500 an hour to do some weird ass shit with dudes. And trust me, that girl was a trooper. Holy shit. Love sex workers. They're fucking champions. But one of the things she shared with me is that therapists in the area would actually send their clients that were dealing with pedophilic urges to her, because giving them an outlet from what they could tell based on everything they could see decreased their likelihood of acting. So fucking a 28-year-old who's short actively made these people less likely to act. I think that's the exact way to handle this. One, because I think sex work should be decriminalized, full stop. But in a lot of ways, I am very reticent, very hesitant to ever condemn someone for something they can't control. A person born with these urges. There was like a discussion on TED Talks where some woman framed it as an orientation, which was stupid as fuck. That language is loaded and bad. But the fact is that there is a point in there somewhere, and that is that these people are dealing with something outside of their control. I think we need to look at this differently, and a lot of people don't. That includes therapists. I think there are therapists who make really shit judgments about this because of their own fucking biases or their own trauma. And so what I'm trying to make very clear to you guys is that my belief is this. I believe if someone is a non-acting pedophile, that is, they experience sexual arousal or fantasize about people who are underage, I think there are methods to be able to deal with that that make them not a danger to society. Now, if someone acts and does harm, I think we need to have a different conversation. I think when someone crosses that line, we need to have some very real questions about what is rehabilitation in that scenario, and also what are they actually able to do? Because once someone crosses that line, the likelihood of them doing so again is very, very high. Partially because of the way our system's functioning, but there's probably some other stuff going on there. So this might be the conversation that gets me canceled, but that's my genuine take. I think we need to talk about non-acting pedophiles differently because I think these people are suffering, and I think people's innate ew factor and grossness of it and their way of dealing with it makes children harmed. It actually increases the likelihood of a child being harmed. And Brittany, you're correct based on the data. That looks about right to what I had. Well, yeah, it's punitive, retributive. It's like in Contra's Justice video, she talked about the guy who was engaging in it and like they decided to set him on fire. Now, I understand the urge, but I don't understand the outcome. And the problem is if you do this at a sort of minority report before the fact idea, again, guilty before proven innocent is a really fucked up idea. Yeah, I think the best way to deal with bad tendencies in general is to incentivize good outcomes, like incentivizing non-acting pedophiles to get therapy or treatment or something. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say good therapy. I would say make it, again, universal health care. I would also argue my ideas, like I think they should be provided access to certain means by which to deal with these urges. Now, obviously, that should not harm anybody. But again, if Alice Little taught me anything, it's that if a guy with these urges goes and fucks her, that's pretty fucking pog. She makes money, and hell, I would make that fucking like a goddamn referral. The fucking state pays for it, and then we basically look for good outcomes. This guy goes and sees her like once or twice a week, and he never hurts anybody. Does anyone else think that's a good idea? Like, or am I just off base here? Now, I want to be very clear again. You know, if I'm going to be canceled for the right things. I am saying this about non-acting. I am not saying this about acting. Acting's a different discussion. I do believe that some level of institutionalization is required there. I'm not sure how to do that necessarily because we get into some questions about safety versus the person's personal rights. And I'm not going to just forget those because I don't really like what they've done. Right? Like, but when we're talking about non-acting people, people who have been, I'll give an analogous thing, and I know people are going to hate this analogy because they're going to think they're not comparable. If we're willing to forgive issues of socioeconomic class, like people who have received legitimate brain damage, what's going to happen is if you look at those situations like in the 80s where they didn't take out, lead paint out of homes and this caused real harm to people that were low income. Those people then go on to commit crimes. We can argue that there's some level of choice there. But again, we've put them in scenarios where they may not be able to function with the society anymore. How much of that is on us? And in the same thing with therapists, if we create a scenario in which a person can't seek help without being judged, aren't we somewhat comparable at that point because we've left this person in a situation where they have to deal with this on their own. That feels very fucked to me. So yeah, that's probably my spiciest take. I think we should probably end this segment a minute. Does anyone have any further questions? Seasonal Spirit said, is it just me, or is this talk about condemning non-actors an example of how authoritarian ideals can backfire horridly? Absolutely. Because when we sort of make a grand generalization saying these people are icky, bad, and terrible, despite not actually doing anything, they just have stuff coming up in their minds that they can't really control. The fact is that if this person acts out and we have taken away everything from them, yeah, it gets into a place where, like, by trying to stamp a thing out, you actually make it worse. That is kind of the outcomes that come with authoritarianism. Hey, Simbel, love you, girl. No, I think you're on the right. I honestly think you're on the right track, Seasonal Spirit. Absolutely, Pog. Certainly falls in the lines, Seasonal. Yeah, I would agree. Scott says agreed, morally sound. Okay. I generally assume when I bring this up that people are going to just have an immediate emotional reaction. My hope is that the folks in my community will be a little bit more critical thinking. So I appreciate you guys hearing that out and being willing. Yeah, and that could very well be that. And those things can be combated by environmental factors. Like you said, genetics load the gun, but they don't fire it. So does anyone have any further questions, or we can end this segment? Does anyone have any questions for me in my background? Any other spicy takes? Anything like that? I'll give you guys like 2-3 minutes to see if you can get your thoughts together, and then we'll go from there. And if you like the stream, please donate. Streamlabs.com/transgrowtherapist/tip. Spirit, got it. Will do. Not much. How's it going? Aurora just missed my spiciest take. No, Radical, that's super true. Like pasta, that's thing. Favorite type of music? I'm terrible with music. I like songs. I listen to what is it, Addicted or Addict from Has Been Hotel, right? The Angel Dust song, and bawled like a child. Mayo is gross now. Also, there was a joke early in the community where we were talking about calling ourselves Hot Sauce Club because I eat everything with hot sauce. Generally speaking, because I generally I've eaten hot dogs with like hot fucking habanero salsa on them. I normally eat fries with like sriracha and like spicy mustard. I cannot get enough of spice. Even though it'll probably kill me. Current frames. Generally speaking, I just thought these were cuter. The frame is really, really light. If you want to buy cheap glasses, by the way, if they ever want to fucking sponsor me, bother them online, and I hope they do. Brittany, we need to work on this, girl. That's embarrassing. I'm sorry for you. That's what my friend said. Culver's. It's spicy for white people. But what was I saying? I lost my entire... frames. Zenny.com. Zenni.com. You want to buy cheap frames? These glasses, you probably think they sent me back like $400-$600, give or take. $100. These have blue light blocking tint on them. They are oleophobic. Yeah, they're fucking great. These glasses are fantastic. I love these glasses. I actually have 2 pairs by these people. There's one that's much smaller ones. I usually do when I'm doing hair dyeing. I just like these ones because they feel really good. Oh no, I'll fucking simp for Zenny.com all day. I love their shit. Cheap glasses the glasses industry is fucking disgusting. So they're great. Onions are, yeah, right? Fucking a good white or red onion. Here, I'll tell you something really great. First off, Tiamat, eat some fucking Tums. It's not that deep. You guys want to make something great? There's a guy that Zena showed me on YouTube. I can't remember his name, but he's like a really cute redhead bodybuilder guy, and he makes food. And he showed this, like, you take like a plumbata, I can't pronounce words. Plumblato? I forget what they're called. But they're fucking like a fairly medium pepper in Mexico. And he basically, like, you load them with fucking like quesadilla cheese. You stick them on the grill. You break that fucking thing to basically like make them black around. You yank off the black parts if you don't want them. Otherwise, you leave them on. They're tasty as shit. Then you chop that up with all the cheese melted inside, and then you put that on a taco. You can even add a little bit of chicken or steak. Oh my god, we made those, and they're so good. Chalk mouth, motherfucker. These things taste. Oops. Those things taste like fucking sweet tarts. Then again, like, I'm gonna be really honest, I eat the extreme sour sweet tarts for fun, so like maybe I'm just built different. So yeah. So why don't we end this segment here? I know there was one other question. What, if any, crossover has come from therapy and from Buddhist studies? A lot of it. Buddhist psychology is really fascinating. I highly recommend it. I also think that there's a lot of really good stuff that I got from there. Like, for example, my notions about shame not being a feeling, but rather a behavior, that comes from Zen. Everything I found as far as philosophy and psychology does it. Favorite food YouTuber? Oh, that's a hard one. I really love You Suck at Cooking. Pasta, don't do this to me, because I will get a P.O. box just to have your mom send me food. Dude, homemade salsa is the bomb. Funny story is the salsa I normally get, it sounds just like so fucking stupid, but like in our area in the Midwest, there's a salsa called Mrs. Renfro's, and their habanero hot is just mwah. It's just good fucking spice, really good flavor. But yeah, yeah, Aurora, I think engaging with that topic makes sense, because I feel like if you don't stop and really slow it down, it can get really, really dicey. Thanagor, I respect it. Josh Weissman's fan. I like him, but his B-roll shit bothers me. He also feels kind of like, I don't know. I just, his personality doesn't clash. It clashes with mine, but his homemade McDonald's hash browns are fucking amazing. I want to make those. And actually, we used his method to redo our cast iron. God, you guys are fucking awesome. These are good questions. So why don't we call it here? And I'll send you benefits when I get it. Fucking do it. Also, costumes for Bunny are good. So yeah, this was just a little bit more of an intimate engagement and discussion. When you said, by the way, when you saw us Josh White, but I thought you were dead naming me for a second. My previous name is Josh, and I just, every time I see it in writing, I go like mild punch to gut. I also think being really honest about that stuff. Obviously, I'm not going to give my full name, but like, that's fine. People calling that I don't really resonate with anymore. It just fucks me up when it comes into the content. This ain't fine. You're good. Josh Weissman is good. I like his work. He's got some good stuff. His hash browns are amazing. Anyway, I'll leave this here. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you have more questions, please send them through Streamlabs. I'll happen to do more AMAs at another point. I think that'd be rad. And yeah, but if you really want a question to be read, donate to streamlabs.com/transgirltherapist/tip. The money goes to help us deal with this, because I'm the only one working. Zena deals with a lot of chronic health issues. You can also become a patron at patreon.com/transgirltherapist. Like, comment, subscribe, do all those things that are for engagement. Give me pretty analytics, in the words of Luxander. And yeah, and you're fine, Linda. There's no way you could have fucking known. It's not like I talk about it. Pasta, yeah. It's hard too, because Josh is such a neutral, like a weirdly neutral name. Like, I just never resonated with it. It wasn't like I heard it and like it just made my heart die. It was just sort of like, Josh. I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.